I would still say that let's take an example. If an employee in an organization is not happy, whether in terms of their compensation or benefits, right? Either they don't understand, or it's confusing, or they're not happy, for example, right? Will the engagement happen? No. So I would still say that total rewards is a function.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the episode 13 of the Leaders Speak podcast. Today, we have a guest, Malati KS. She has more than 30 years experience in total reward function, and we will discuss about total reward system, how this help organization, and how this will help employee as an organization. Let's dive in to the continue the conversation with Malati KS. Hi, Malati. Welcome to the Leaders Speak podcast.
Hi, Basuraj.
Thank you so much for coming over here. Um, Let's understand about your personal life, like where you born, what is your education background. Let's understand that.
Sure, definitely. So I'm born and brought up in Bangalore. Okay. My father was employed in HMT. So he was in charge of stores in HMT, and so we all my life I've been born and brought up in HMT colony. Okay. And studied also there in the schooling all around HMT itself. And yeah, I mean, so in terms of my family, I would say my father, my mother, and we were three siblings. My sister, elder sister, my brother, and myself. I am the youngest in the family. And yeah, and in terms of my whole life, I would say, I think the education, the upbringing, and all was excellent. I would say from the HMT colony perspective, right? Excellent weather, excellent neighborhood, and yeah, full greenery, and it was an awesome place for us. And plus, we did so colony life itself is very different, right? It gives you the socialization is awesome in a colony life. So I mean, you don't worry about the caste, creed, religion, nothing. It's all about you have fun together, you play together, and a lot of friends around. So it was a great experience for us. Yeah, all of them going good till we were in colony. Like I said, I was the youngest, and so we had a long gap between my sister, elder sister, and myself, right? About 8 years. She's 8 years elder to me. So it was a long gap. And yeah. But however, I think this itself was another turning point in my life. My father retired when I was 17 years. Of course, I was studying also well. I was very studious and, high energy and studying well. I wanted to be an engineer, like any other aspirational, human being. And then I think it was also ingrained, right? Like if you're studying well in school, maybe you'll become an engineer or a doctor. If you're average, maybe perhaps you pick up a commerce or something. But if you're not studying well, then you get into the field of arts and then explore your life and all of. So I think that's the kind of a tagline we almost lived through. Like yeah, but life had a different story for me, and like I said, once I completed my 10th standard, I knew that with my family condition, I won't be able to do engineering. Okay. Of course, it was expensive then, expensive affair, getting into a good college, then, um, plus earnability was a challenge because my father retired, and my sister was also studying final year degree or so. And that's when I decided that I will take up diploma. Both me and my sister explored a few other options. What is that I could do, perhaps, other than going into a typical line of science and then whatever. So then we explored this field of diploma in commercial practice. So I did my diploma in commercial practice. This the same SJP campus where you have all the polytechnics colleges.
Yeah.
Near KR Circle, right? And yeah, so I stepped into a new world, not knowing what it is, but got into diploma in commercial practice. It was a 3 years journey for me. And after complete, and it's more on the commerce side, right? Because it's the names, as the name suggests, diploma in commercial practice. So it was more of a commerce related subjects that you do. And post this, you could also join directly into second year BCom because this was a 3 year course.
Okay.
Yeah, so I finished my 3 years. So at the age of 18, and it so happened I also was into about learning a little bit about computer. So I took up some course. So we had moved because my father had retired. So we moved from Colony and we moved to Mathikere. So we started staying in the rented house. So that's when hit to me, well, the Colony life and plus the real life is like very different, right? You end up staying in a house which is not very convenient and so many stuff, right? But yeah, but still good. um and yeah, from a from a career journey perspective, I was just exploring my course in computer. And then computer courses were also not evolved as such, right? I mean, you NIIT also had not come in to that extent. So but later on, it came in as a course which many people did, right? Like a MCA kind of a stuff. But that and then it was more of a basic, and you learn some basic database and DBase and then stuff like that.
That's true.
Yeah, and so while exploring this, I also happened to learn about Bosch training programs. And so I gave my exam also there. It's an aptitude test or something that you do, and I got through. And I stepped into the world of corporate at the age of 18.
Wow.
So so started with Bosch. It was a 1 year training program.
Okay.
I also was the main reason that I did diploma was also because I wanted to get into a job sooner
Acha.
so that I can support my family from a financial aspect, right? So yeah, and Bosch happened, and it was a 1 year training where we work through different departments in a 1 year session. So every month you get to, on a rotational basis, you work in different departments in Bosch. This was a non-IT side, the Micro Bosch, right?
Okay, I know.
Or not a good.
Correct.
And so I got opportunity to work with different departments, including HR, purchase department, finance department, and a few other departments like in finance itself we had multiple wings: accounts in finance, secretarial, and a lot of different wings that we had worked. And I happened to do 2 rotation in HR, and yeah, so that was about 12 months training. And after the training again, this was like a like a scheduled training. You work on a 1 year, 12 months period. And after that, I was again called for an extension of a training. So this is when you actually get into a particular department and start your journey.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So I went into HR. So it's not by choice, but by chance, because at the age of 18, you don't even know what HR is and what the finance is and all of those, right? But yeah, pretty much started my journey with HR there. As a trainee, yes, it was more of a learning experience. I started more supporting on the learning and development side. Right? Earlier, it was called as training and development. Of course, now you have an evolved names for many departments.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was the learning and development area where I used to help the training team with the coordination, the program, and all this. That's when my journey started with HR. And after 1 year, or of my extension of trainee kind of a scenario, I also got absorbed as a full-time employee with Micro Bosch in HR department. So I would say that's when my journey started. That was in the year 1995.
Acha, 95.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Acha, you mean after working with them as a training for 1 year, going with different department wise like
Correct.
finance or HR and other operations and all, but you choose HR as a profession, right?
correct.
What made you to choose HR only in that particular, that initially?
It's not my
Do you
choice.
influenced by the
It was not my choice. It was by chance. Okay. Because see, I worked during this training period. I got to work with multiple departments, right? But the HR is where maybe perhaps they also liked the work that I had done during the training period. I got to work for one more month. So, in 12 months, I had done 2 months in HR.
HR? Okay.
And then maybe perhaps, out of so many people that they would have seen, they had picked me up for the extension. So that's how it happened. It was not by choice, right? And also, if I look back now, right, way back in 1995, what do you see HR today versus what was HR earlier?
Okay.
Very different, right? It was even called as human HRD, human resource development. You were still a support function while still you had strong leaders in Bosch who were leading the HR department then. They are the veterans, I would say, that I have worked with earlier. But still, you are considered as a support function, right? Enabling function, support function. Then, and overall, I think it was about 10,000 employee strength, 10,000 or 12,000 employee strength. That was the Micro Bosch, right? Very very different functions. The way you work, even I think the nomenclature of departments are also very different. It's training and development,
Correct.
recruitment, comp and ben. I think you no longer use these terminologies, or you very rarely use now. You have a polished version of saying talent acquisition, and then learning and development. Yeah. Earlier, I think OD, right? The organization development. Now you call it an HR transformation.
Wow.
And things like that, right? Earlier, you never had those kind of naming convention. So I would say even then, whatever work that we are doing today, very, very different the way it was earlier. We're very conservative in our approach, the way things happen, even the benchmarking and all of those. The way how organization come forward today versus then was very different, right? So, being part of Comp and Ben department, working on, how do you do salary increases? How do you do annual increases? How do you do performance management? Was very different. We had a lot of manual intervention, of course. But not only that, the way the each function used to work also, I think it's evolved over a period of time, I would say. But having said that, yeah, for me it was all new. I was like young, just with full of energy, and then interested in learning a lot of these stuff. So that's when, based on I think my high energy or whatever, I started to move also from one department to another department, which helped me learn different areas of HR. Right.
Yeah.
So
After only you start moving.
yeah.
the-
So every 3 years, kind of a staff, I also got rotated to another function. So 3 years I was with training and development, where I did quite a lot of like earlier I was just supporting to the extent of I had moved in also taking the induction program for the engineer trainees, induction session even for the new employees. Started also how we can accommodate employees, in terms of their first few days in the job from an HR standpoint. Whatever you call it, orientation or induction today, right? So yeah, so that's how the journey started. And I moved to recruitment, you call talent acquisition today. So that's where I started, with supporting and contributing to the recruitment, in hiring, supporting my managers at the hiring front. From there to I evolved, even started interviewing at a lower end of, session. I would say that had it been that if I look back, I would have gotten to a conventional way of studying, going to college, doing my degree. I wouldn't have learned all these things. These were so if I reflect back now, I feel that literally I was on the job doing my MBA in Michael Bosch. So that's how I put it right now. If I reflect back on my own journey, right, where people, you pay money and you go to college and learn a lot of things in theory.
Yeah.
I practically was experiencing and delivering those, but I was getting paid in return for the work that I was doing. So I think that's how I put it right now, if I have to take it. And then after 3 years of recruitment, I moved to Compen Ben. Right, the day I started from Compen Ben is when I think forever in I got tagged into Total Rewards person in my journey.
Really.
For whatever reason. Though I've done, few stings of other functions in HR, but predominantly, my contribution has been towards total rewards function.
Function. Okay, total reward function.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what. I just going through your profile, and you have more than 3 decade experience in HR, and especially that total reward function. Could you elaborate how it works in organization? Like these kind of total reward functions work to only the big corporation, or any kind of companies also they want to adapt?
I would say Compen Ben is the main area, where you recognize as an employee. Let's say if you have to look at, let's say an employee is joining an organization. Let's say, Basavaraj, you are looking for a job and you want to apply for a position, right? So let's say you apply for some, whatever, XYZ company, right? Then, so the first thing that you look for, aspire for is what? Compensation, right? One is, of course, you talk about the position that you would like to handle, what area of work, what job title, or what is the compensation? Because compensation is one of the primary, if I can say cash is the king, still, right? Cash is the king when it comes to employment. Because you get paid for the work that you do, and that becomes a very critical area where you trade off as an employee, that you are giving your time to the employer, in turn you're getting paid, in a very simple term, right? So which means that um, this is one area that you would first experience as an employee, right? Because you accept an offer from an employment. So when do you accept an employment from an organization? Is when your aspirations are met. One is from an employer side, of course. You will have to go through the interviews. You will get selected if you are a right candidate, and all of those from an employer side. Let's look at from an employee angle, right? So you accept an offer when every aspiration of yours is met, right? In terms of the position that they are offering, or the role that you understand based on the JD and what was explained during the interview process, and of course the offer, which tells you this is your compensation and this is your benefits in the organization, and a lot of other factors that you consider. Could be the brand value, could be your dream company, and a lot of things that you can attach to. But everything that you attach to is towards your compensation, right? So that's when I say the first identity as an employee is the compensation and benefits. That's where you accept an offer. So to that extent, yes, I would say total rewards function is one of the super critical function in the HR organization.
Okay.
Right? Of course, you start maybe with interacting with hiring team or the talent acquisition team, a recruiter calls you and explains you, and then you get into an interview. Interview may be done by HR first and then with the business leaders, etc. Right? And after you clear multiple rounds, and again you come back to HR round, discussing your offer.
Any corporates, normally they talk about more on to employee engagement. How this different from this total rewards function? How is different from these things?
Okay. So let's say let's take an first of all, it's an interesting question, right? I would still say that let's take an example. If an employee in an organization is not happy, whether in terms of their compensation or benefits, right? Either they don't understand, or it's confusing, or they're not happy, for example, right? Will the engagement happen? No. So I would still say that total rewards is a function which kind of touches every life cycle of an employee. What I mean is, you start with an offer, which is start from the recruitment, right? And then you go through all those performance, your confirmation happens, you go through your annual cycles, you get increments. There are benefits, right? A lot of benefits that employee attach their sentiments. Let's say, be it an insurance, for example. Let's say if some organizations are paying very good, having very good policies for employees towards, family insurance. Um, so whenever there is a situation where employee has to face in terms of health issues or challenges for either himself or herself or for a family, right? So when you have an insurance, it kind of gives you so much of comfort that you don't have to shell out money, emergency, whenever there is an emergency in the family. Right? This is one of the great benefits that the employee associate themselves with.
Okay.
Right? Not only that, and also your, be it the promotions, the career movement that happens, or let it be a separation. When an employee decides to leave the organization, you still are looking for your final, what do you call that, full and final paycheck that still relates to your total rewards function. So if you look back, the total rewards function touches every area of your employment. So I would say this is one of the critical ingredient for the employee engagement as well. As long as an organization is investing in the talent, not just in the career front, but also from a financial perspective, right? That's when the growth happens. That's when satisfaction as a score also is indicated, right? Why there are a lot of other function in terms of learning and development, the career progression, how the employees are moving, their learnability in the organization, what is the culture of the organization. All of it matters. But I would still say cash is the king and benefits is where it matters for employees when it comes to overall as an employment. So to your question, uh, if an employee engagement score needs to improve, you call it a ESAT or a CSAT or whatever, right? Everything translate to how well your organization has, structured its total rewards.
Okay, got it. You mean to say that every touch point of the employee when he going to, after giving the interview from the day of joining and at the time of really is you're going to switch to the other job also, you're going to take care of those reward systems, right?
Absolutely.
And could you help us some of the examples that how that impacted our organization growth? I think you have a more than 30 years experience. You have done a lot of strategy or a lot of tools that going to help the employee by doing such things that has helped the overall performance of the organization.
Sure. Say there are multiple examples that I can give you. Maybe I'll pick up a few examples which I have dealt with myself. Right. In one of the organization, we also had, this was a large IT organization where we often had the challenges around the compliance. Compliance is also one of the critical element, right? from a business standpoint. Compliance, risk and compliance is is one of the super critical department, right? So this was a multi-country, presence and everything. So typically, when we used to deploy employees from India to another country, let's take an example of US, right? India to US, right? So you call it a deputation or you call it an on-site assignment from a understanding perspective, right? So whenever you do that, you'll have to meet certain visa, immigration kind of norms, right? Let's say, for example, if you have to, give an employee, extend an employee an L1 visa or an H1, H2 visa, right? There are certain norms that you will have to follow in terms of minimum wages, right? You have to meet the prevailing wage or a minimum wage. I mean, you might call it in different norms in each of the countries. So one is that, right? So there were certain challenges because the way, and this also, like compliance is done by one other team, compensation is done by one other team, HR takes care of, I mean, the business HR takes care of the business side of HR, right? There is a country HR which takes care of the business vertical. And plus you have a country HR in the other geographies who is also concerned about from a country norms and process. And you have a country legal team in the other geographies, and you have an India legal team who takes care. So you can imagine, and plus there is systems team who helps us in the process flow. So you can imagine so many departments that are interlinked. But in reality or practically, everyone works in silence. Okay, right? So what happens then? There is always challenge in terms of miscommunication or whatever. It may not be intentional, but from a process standpoint itself, there is a gap. Let's call it a gap for the ease of understanding, right? So then, so when you happen to also notice that some compliance issues that have happened, the companies become the limelight, right? You will see in the Google and here and everywhere that the company has paid so much penalty, and I'm sure you would have seen so many companies paying penalties for being non-compliant. So this was one of the area where a lot of challenges that the companies was facing. So I did the project management to kind of how we can resolve this particular challenge. Okay. While yes, my predecessor had also tried and had put in certain models and everything, but for some or the other reason, we could not launch the module that we were looking at for this. So I had joined the organization where I immediately after joining, the expectation was I start with this area of work because it was super critical for us to solve. But multi-stakeholder, multi-country, team that is involved, and you need to work together to bring in this module. So that was the situation. So you work with right from payroll team, the operational team, the systems team, the legal team, the HR team, and the local HR in the US. And within 1 year, we rolled out this compensation module. Of course, I also went to the location where we did launch with two other team members. And this happened, and I think it eased out from a company standpoint a lot of immigration challenges that we were facing through. And after releasing this compensation module, from the time we saw the fruit of this exercise, right, we also replicated this in other geographies. Okay, to Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and a lot of geographies it happened. Of course, if you ask me now, is it relevant? Things evolve, right? You need to also evolve. I also left that company and came, but what I'm trying to say is you play a critical role in ensuring that even though if each department objectives are varied, right, you need to ensure that all of us are working for a common purpose. This was an amazing learning for me to say that when you work closely with stakeholders, work together with stakeholders on a common goal, magic happens. Okay. Okay. So this was amazing learning for me as well. Of course, during this period, you have to challenge people, challenge process, challenge system um, beyond your capacity, right? While, by nature, uh, I am not aggressive. I am calm and composed. Um, and I don't talk too much when it comes to, work. But I love my job, right? So, but one more thing, I realized my biggest power, or a superpower, if I call, was that I could work very well with people. So that was one of my biggest strength, that I realized that during this process, I was able to work with each one of the stakeholders and with different interests, right? They have their own interests. They come with their own department interests, but yet we achieved this. Yeah, it was a great exercise, great experience. So one such example, right, where we could solve the compliance challenge for an organization. Though I am not a compliance guru, I'm not a compliance, I don't handle compliance, but in this role, as a rewards function, compliance also plays a critical, you need to understand the technicalities of compliance and HR as well. Uh, from a reward standpoint, because you need to know how it affects when there are certain changes that happens in the reward function. So that's why this function is, I would say, critical, and it touches every point in the life cycle manager.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we talk about total reward function systems, let's say if you have a two employee, like employee A and employee B, how this system going to help these people? Like, are they going to get same kind of attention towards them based on the performance, based on work what they're doing, or do you have a separate system for to help them to do the reward that what basically work on it?
See, so there are certain technicalities that we read. One is first understanding the basic understanding. We go with this. No one compensation the same as the other individual.
Yes.
Right? There is always a reason to it. Either somebody comes with a lot of experience, less experience, fresher, somebody is a professional, somebody is a specialist, somebody is an expert, somebody is a leader, somebody is an individual contributor. So many parameters.
Right.
Right? So there is never, a structure that you would say that it'll be, or say the compensation of one employee would be same as another employee, because there's always a difference in the way they come in from an employment standpoint as well. However, by and large, what, from the overall, say, let's say at a 25,000 feet high level, you would look at if all the parameters are, say, similar, right? Like experience, the professional aspects, the expertise, more or less similar. You can't say it will be exactly same. There will be variation. As long as it falls within a range, right? You call it a pay range or a compensation range, it's okay, right? You are still paying fairly an employee, which is fair, right? While you will also ensure that every year when the annual cycle happens, based on the reward, right? Whether the high performance, low performance, average performance, and all of those. And based on the business affordability also, right? You get a budget. It says, what is your merit increase percentage, right? We talk about, right? What is market giving? What is, 10%, 9%. In India, we talk about, right? 8%, 9%, 10%. So depending on that, based on the individual performance for the year, employee increment can change, right? Somebody might get an average increase, let's say at a budget, which is 9%, or somebody who is doing excellently well, or who has exceeded performance, can get maybe 1.5x or maybe up to 2x also. What I mean is, if it's a 9% is the average increase, somebody might get a 15% or a 18% as
Okay.
right? Which means that their salary might jump slightly higher than the average before. Of course, there is a module, we call it a merit increase module. It's a matrix that you use to say So typically how you do it, is you apply a little bit of science to it to say, if the employee is doing well, high potential, exceeded performance, but low in the compensation, right? You would want to reward that particular employee with a higher increment, while somebody who is an average to low performance, but sitting at a higher compensation. So you want to award a lesser percentage of increase. So there is a merit module that we call it. So you kind of develop that merit module, and we you call it a budget distribution. So you distribute the budget to say, okay, who will get what, given your budget is whatever 5% or 10% or whatever. So the premise that you go with is average increase with somebody who is achieved target should get the average increase, which is whatever 5% or a 9% that has been decided.
Okay. Yeah. Is basically talking about the point of compensation, right? Like what they're going to get benefit.
Correct.
And couple of companies work on this reward system. For the employee, they provide the goodies basically. How that will be different from this? Like,
See-
because they have a thing that they encourage those people with goodies or some vouchers to not only the cash benefit of what I'm talking about, these kind of, how this different from your things?
Yeah, I'll talk about my own experience. I am a competent person, but I'm also an employee, right?
Okay.
So when I worked in the organization for solving this compliance, and plus there was one other challenge that the organization had. I was rewarded with the iPhone. Okay. Of course, I mean, that was, I would say this is still a goodie. Then, see, that was when iPhone 6 had just launched. Okay. I think it was what, 80K or 83K or something was the cost, right, in India when it launched. And I was having a very small, and not even an Android. I was carrying a very small, and my team members used to make fun of me. What, Malti, you changed your phone. It's a bit high time that you change your phone. But I suddenly got rewarded with the iPhone. And of course, now everybody has an iPhone, which is most common. But then getting an iPhone was really a great feeling, right? So yeah, so many organizations. It is also an integral part of, I would say, total rewards function.
Okay.
You call this as a rewards and recognition program.
Again, that depends on the company policies. Right?
It's a policy.
Policy.
It's a part of the policy, HR policies, where when you have different programs. See, not every organization would want to give an iPhone, right? So that's not the point. The point here is, it depends on what kind of a program, rewards and recognition program, or you call it an R&R program, rewards and recognition program. So some organization give it as a point-based system.
Yeah.
So what they do is you keep collecting points as an employee for the reward that you get. And you could then encash it with either an Amazon voucher, or they would have their own merchandise where you could buy stuff and all of those.
The points based on the performance of the work, what they're doing.
Correct. So it's part of the R&R platform where they get rewarded specifically. And when you accumulate the points, you will be able to exchange with certain things, right? There are employees who have exchanged that they have bought microwave, they've bought fridge, they've bought, or maybe some employees chose to get into a lifestyle membership of gym membership, whatever. I mean, the creativity can go to whatever extent. So this is one of the system which is point-based system. I would say this is more of a revolutionary methodology that you have today in the organization. Why? There could be other organization where they say they'll give you voucher, either an Amazon voucher, like a 5,000 voucher or a 10,000 voucher.
Yes.
Or let's say if it's a team award, you get whatever 20, 25K that you distribute to the team. So this is a very different award, right? Like where you are getting recognized. Let's say you also call with some nomenclature for the award, right? Like a rising star, or it's for dedication that you have given, or it's for team player, or you have lived values. So it's more of value based award. So there are different, based on the policies, you call it with a different names, and you would like to, and HR also gives a budget for each department how you can drive this R&R. So it typically goes through a nomination process, and you get nominated based on the period, right? It's either a quarterly award, or it's an half yearly award, or it's an annual award. And some organizations, like a large organization today, also do lifetime achievement award. It's like really, it's at a very different scale that you can think of. It's like really getting a FIFA award kind of a feeler. But yeah, there are a lot of organizations who also do annual, or let's say lifetime achievement award kind of functions as well, where it is also a grand finale that happens. It's an event based program where employees are awarded either for a team based award or a project based award based on the projects that they have delivered. They also get lifetime achievement award.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, in HR there are different, like one is recruitment or talent acquisition or L&D, learning and development. There are different divisions and people going to take care of in HR. If I ask you that where you put total reward function, the systems, let's say from bar 0 to 10, let's say 0 is a low and 9 or 10 is the highest, where you put this particular? What is how much important for the organization?
I would say it's 10 on 10. Not because I am part of Total Rewards. Like I said, I also take sessions to, either a lot of client organizations. I've also done to business managers and to many, while I was a practitioner and now I'm a consultant.
Okay.
But in both these, function, I have also taken sessions on Total Rewards. So I've also taken a few sessions for the college students as well.
That's great.
Right? So this particular function, like I said, let's take any example, right? Let's forget about HR for a while.
Okay.
And let's take business, right? So business talks about the company growth, the profitability, the employee engagement score. These are the critical parameters for an organization. What do you call organization's ranking, right? So you would also want to rank. These days you have so many companies who do, right, your ambition, your a lot of Glassdoor and all of those who give reviews and rank the companies also, right? 4 on 5, 5 on 5.
Yeah.
So what are the parameters that they use, right? Either the company growth, right? They're talking about the culture in the company. You watch some of these Google reviews about employers, right? Any big employers that you take, there is a rating that comes in.
Correct.
Right? Where they also talk about, in this company, the culture is not good, the managers are not good, or they talk about the company pays, the payment, the salary is not great, or the benefits is not great, or they talk about salaries are pretty good and benefits are awesome, but the culture is not good. A lot of these kind of parameters, right? So all of this is possible only in a total rewards functioning, right? So the mere existence of the company where we are talking also, right, from a talent, whether it's talent attraction, talent retention, all of it, the critical role is played through the rewards function. That's why I also take one specific session which talks about will total rewards function be a competitive edge for a company? So which really, I deep down on some of these aspects, which talks about how we touch upon as a function as total rewards, each of these area of employee life cycle, and why a total reward function is a competitive edge in an organization. Right? And let's say even a CHRO or a CFO today, right? Whenever there is an annual review cycle that happens in an organization, or even be it the company wants to know their competitive positioning in terms of where do they stand from a market standpoint, right? Whether they're paying high, low, or whatever. everything is towards compensation or a total rewards, right? Either on a compensation side or a benefit side. As an organization, you want to know how competitive we are, right? So why does that help? It helps in attracting the talent. It helps in retaining the talent. Let's take, for example, the lot of leading companies, right, that you have today, wherein if somebody gets an interview for an interview, got selected for an interview, I'm sure they will get excited, right? Because it's a big company. Big company has aspiration is that yes, the role that you would want to play in a dream company. This is what people say, right? Dream company, right? And then you would like to work in a dream company and get paid higher than the rest of your peers. What does it really mean, right? Again, we come back to total rewards, right? We are talking about total rewards here as well. So I would still say that it's 10 on 10. Why? Because the mere, what do you call, the presence of the employer or an employment is felt through this function.
Mhm. Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, because see, now these kind of things happen only the big corporations. Let's say, for example, there are a lot of startups are there, and mid-size companies are coming up. Are there? How they can start? Like, let's say they don't have any these kind of reward system in their organization. Where they can start initially? Like, there is anything to start with? Okay, I don't know the system basically because you are the best person who can help us. How can they start? Like maybe you take it startup or a mid-size companies.
Sure. So let's say mid-size companies are still would have done some journey, right? From a startup to evolved and they've reached certain stage. So we typically call this like a peer, right? Peer in the sense how comparable you are. So basically, in any benchmarking exercise that you do, you would like to compare with your peer. So what does peer mean? If it's a startup organization, right, you would want to compare with the certain startup organization. How are they placed? How are they positioned in all of those, right? While you may not have a full-fledged function of HR, there may be one person or a 2% at the most handling all the functions of HR. But still, even if it's one or two persons who would be handling the HR in a startup, you have to hire people. So you need to do recruitment. You need to you need people to do the job. That means there are certain jobs that you need to define that these are the jobs that, let's say, for example, it's a tech startup, right? So you need to know what kind of a tech that we are in, what kind of a competition. Is this an AI based technology that we are working on? Is it a product company we are getting into, or are we services based? One is on the business side that you are looking at, and the other side is the people side, where you are, you have to hire people, and you have to also ensure that they are doing the job as needed. By the function may not be very well defined like in a large organization, because you there will be overlaps and all of those, right? And then you also need to ensure that you have to pay them as a from an employment standpoint, right? So generally in a startup, what they do, even if you hire one or two, employees for critical functions, you would want to hire a cream of talent, right? But pay them higher salary. Why? Because that's the only way you will attract talent, right? And it could also be possible that over a period of time, when this organization matures and move into mid-size organization or whatever, these people who have been hired as a pillars, you can call it, right, can move to becoming and heading a function, for example, right? That's where you will also see a lot of startup organization where youngsters become HR heads.
Correct.
Where youngsters are becoming functional heads, right? So you are going to give them an aspirational value to say that in a large organization where it's a big ocean, right, you are still a small fish, right? But in a small organization, you are a big fish, right? Because you are, though you start up small and all. So that's how you kind of, as an employer, place your proposition. to say, you could also say that I would want to as a startup because I may not pay a lot in cash, but I will do some kind of a long term compensation also. So what would that do for an employer? That you are trying to retain an employee for a longer period, so which will kind of help them in retention, and you're giving long term benefits like long term incentives, defer cash. So these are some of the concepts that you try to work with. So you work with a compensation package that works from a startup perspective. However, you tend, from a very generic overview perspective, you tend to pay slightly higher, and you are hiring the cream of talent, and you could also show them growth from a value chain perspective. So that's how you look at from if you are looking at a different stages of employment. Mid-size, like I said, you would want to compare with the mid-size companies, right? So typically, what you have seen is one is you have from an employee standpoint, as an employee, right? I would either want to go, if I'm working in a mid-size company, maybe for some reason I might aspire perhaps to get into a startup. Maybe can I take a risk and become a lead very soon is one aspiration level. Another aspiration level is, can I attempt a higher organization, a matured organization? Though the position may be a little bit you compromise, or it may be a one level above, and whatever is the kind of a thing. But you're more looking at a stability and lot of other reasoning as an employee mindset, correct?
Yeah.
Uh, however, so what it means really is the talent is fungible. Talent can, see, as an employer perspective, you can lose talent either to a startup company or to a mid-sized company or to a big company. So when we talk about peer, what we also advise our organizations is, you look at peer. One is from your business, which are competition, right? The perfect competition that you want to compare with, to say how are they paying versus where do we want to stand in terms of competitive positioning, right? Another aspect we also advise them is, where you are hiring talent or where you are losing talent, they are also part of your peer group, right? Because you are losing employees to some of these organizations, right? So it's ideal to consider those organizations also in your peer group. So generally, you have a mix of competition and the talent competition as a peer group. So then we advise organizations. So when you look at a peer group, you compare, do a competitive positioning, and advise in terms of where their employees stand, whether it needs correction, whether they're paid, significantly low or high, or they are within the median, or whatever the component. And plus, it's also an organization's decision to say, look, I see most of the time people say, look, I want to be at a market median, which is what most of the organization would like to benchmark on. What does it mean? It means that median is 50th percentile, right? So 50th percentile means that there are 50 organizations, in the company that I am paying either less or more than lesser than those 50 companies, and there are 50 companies ahead of you.
More than.
That's what it really means, because you're cutting across median. So most of them would look at median as a, but if you're a startup, maybe a certain critical position, you want to say, I will go up to 90th percentile, pay them, or a 75th percentile, and things like that. So so it's a positioning where you would want to take a call on how do we want to define at an overall level, and maybe at a criticality level, maybe I would like to, defer slightly because they are my key talent, and hence I would like to pay higher more. Or you want to bring in some kind of a reward system other than the compensation. So these are some of the things that you would look at.
Got it. And in HR also, like, it's been more than 30 years you are in the HR profession. You evolve, how much HR has evolved from last 30 years. Maybe let's say if we take a technology, what challenges you face when it's come to the reward system? Like, how you adapted those challenges or technology when it's come to reward system?
I would say, like, I think initially during our conversation, I also said I started when it was not even evolved,
Acha.
right, as a function. So I would say HR, especially after the IT wave, right, 2000 and above, is when you saw a wave of changes in the HR function itself, correct? Though a larger part of earlier HR function still was considered as a enabling function or a support function. Let me not even call enabling function. So a support function, support system, where HR was told, I need this many people to hire, and I'm going to hire this many.
That's it. Yeah.
Correct. But if you look at from long from now for 30 years, you are now working with the business to talk about what are your long term strategies, what are your talent strategies that you would like to look at, what kind of people that you would like to look in. So with, of course, with the AI coming in, the generative AI or whatever wave that we saw in the last 1 to 2 years, why this has always been there. But I think from so much of noise is happening from the last 2 3 years, that you could post pandemic, if I can say, right, where you are really looking at how your function itself needs to evolve, right? Like you call it, we typically call this as an automation versus augmentation, right? So you're looking at how much of your function needs to get automated and how much your function may not get automated for a reason. Let's take an example of supply chain, right? In a supply chain as a function, you know that a lot of automation may not be possible because it also has a lot of movements of goods involved and things like that, right? So it's lesser risk when it comes to automation as a process. While you take certain routine and mundane and administrative tasks, it's a high risk, right? Because a lot of these jobs can get automated, and hence you may not have an admin function like how you had earlier period, right? I would say there is a huge lot of change that's happening or evolving in terms of the function itself. But if I have to talk really from an HR standpoint, today you see HR, the CHROs, as the business architect. They're no longer support functions. So they are driving the business. You have seen a lot of CHROs taking the position of a CEO, which was never heard of earlier, right? So it was always, maybe it was logically a CFO. You're a CFO, you're close to a business, and then from a CFO, you have seen instances moving as CEO or from a business functions, but rarely so in the earlier era. You saw a CHRO becoming. I don't think you had a word called CHRO.
Yeah.
HR,
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
right? So now you call CHRO. So I would say that as an HR function, as a CHRO, we are playing the business architect role, where we are driving a lot of business strategies. We are driving how a talent strategy should evolve, and more so with the AI and a lot of automation era that we are going to see. The human interface and how it will evolve will be even more challenging and interesting as we move forward. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. As you mentioned that there's a lot of limelight for a CHRO, right? Uh, why CHRO is getting more limelight now? Because as you mentioned, now they need more human touch, no, that interaction. And do you have any incident that CHRO is getting more limelight in the
Of course, I can talk a lot, but I will keep it short. I think I made a LinkedIn post also on this one.
What is it?
So you can definitely watch my video, which is available on my LinkedIn post. See, one is, I would say HR as a function itself has evolved over a period of time that we were discussing, right? If I have to quote one simple example from my own experience, in one of the organization where I was working, there was a huge noise in terms of attrition, right? So there was one group of department where we were talking about a lot of attrition. So one of the business manager also called me to say that, hey Malti, look, there is, we need to, look at salary increases perhaps, because people are leaving, right? But if we really, if you really go, it's not always about the salary intervention that we want to bring in, right? There could be many other ways. So I basically step back to understand the challenge here, right? And to look at the experts of the exit interviews, and also did a lot of stakeholder discussions, right? Surprisingly, to my knowledge, um, it was not about the compensation that people were worried about. They had no clue on how their career was moving ahead, right? There was slight challenge in terms of business growth as well, because in a business, right, the ups and downs are quite common and all of those, right? And also when such things happen, you always have a cost optimization discussion that happens. So I realized in one of the CFO called me for a discussion pretty much around the benchmarking, and they wanted to do some cost optimization, right? So I see it was a CFO and the business head. You don't have a CHRO in the room, right? But surprisingly, you have a business head, you have the CFO who is talking about talent optimization, how do we go about, but you don't even have a CHRO in the room for discussion. And that's super critical, isn't it? Because we are any decision that you take from an optimization perspective would affect the talent management. And it's critical that you need to have the HR head or a CHRO in the room for the discussion, right? I did highlight this, and then we reconvened to talk about how do we go about and all of those. And we did an intervention exercise as well, where we kind of brought in certain change in the way we look at, and it was more of a pilot model that we looked at, to say that let's rework on how are we talking about the career ladder and the career growth from an employee standpoint, right? And also look at how we can bring in certain differentiated rewards from a business growth standpoint, right? And also look at people were not even understanding how a variable pay would get paid. Right? There's a lot of confusion around how the payout happens and all of those, right? So we also restructured how a variable pay should, kind of be looked at from an overall perspective. So not just going by simply increasing the salaries, we reworked on few of the areas that we need to look at as a holistic view from a talent management perspective. I think we were able to see a lot of good churn, or I would say good employment engagement model, wherein we saw surprisingly that talent engagement was getting better, right? And attrition was also settling down. Not only that, we also saw business performance was gaining traction. So it all goes to say that how critical and CHRO function is. That's why I quoted this sentence earlier. CHRO is a business architect today who drives the business strategy or a talent strategy, right? It's super critical. And yeah, I mean, there could be many instances. This is one of the instances that I could quote. So we always look at in one lens. I would always say we should step back as an HR professional, look at what strategy would work in, hear the employee voice, because it gives you a lot of message in terms of what employees are saying. So when I say hear the voice of employees, it could be various modes, right? Employees are making noise either in some places, either it's in the form of exec interviews, or it could be you want to run an employee survey to understand, right? So some of the organization also go to an extent of organizing an alumni meet of ex-employees, right? Why do they do it? They also want to kind of bring that message that there are some changes happening, so that some of them would like to reconsider. They're welcome.
Correct.
Right? So these are also a good strategy. So so that goes back to say why a CHRO position is so important. I hope I answered your question.
I agree on that 100%. That's very, very important. And what you want to give, like some of the pro tips for upcoming HR professional? Do you have any couple of tips you can just share with us.
See, the best example that I could give is I have seen the evolution of the function, right? Where most of the time earlier, we have known to be a support function. I think this is one of the interesting phase of HR where, you should be part of this journey to understand and get nurtured yourself. That's my message to youngsters to say, look at HR as a lucrative option where we are not just no longer just an execution department. We are driving strategy, we are driving excellence, and what more that we ask for, right? And another important aspect that I would like to give message to youngsters is love your job, right? It's important to love your job. Only then, so when you love what you do is when you can make an impact. That's what I strongly believe.
100% agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And another important aspect is, see, as an youngster, I always heard this, right? People talk about competition, bhago, you have to win the race. I never believed in that right from my childhood. I always thought competition is a myth for me. I always wanted to work with people. Collaboration was my power. I think if I look back my career, I still feel my superpower has been working with people well. So these are the three messages that I would like to give. One is, this is the time for people to join HR and learn the excellence way of working. Love your job, right? And another one is, for me, competition is a myth. What works is the human interface and the effective stakeholder management or working with people.
Super. Thank you so much, Malati. This episode something different from us because normally we used to discuss about compliances, culture, L&D, those things. But here, this episode, we discuss more on total reward system. And personally, I got a lot of inputs. Thank you so much. I hope our viewers also got a lot of input from these things. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Basavaraj, and thank you for calling me for this discussion. And and it was great sharing my experience here, and thanks to your team behind the scene as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much once again for coming.
Thank you.
This is a sustainable gift from Raptor.
Thank you so much. Nice gesture.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. The three takeaway from this episode is, the number one is love your job. It's very important for any person who want to pursue her or his career. You need to love your job, irrespective of any kind of, like maybe HR or sales or marketing or operation or finance, anything. You need to love your job. The second one is personalized reward system. It's very important. Again, organization, you need to focus on personalized reward system because depends on individual. They are different kind of a work environment. You need to focus more on personalized reward system. The third one is, irrespective of any size of the organization, even though you are a startup or mid-size, you need to focus on building your reward system in organization. That's going to help you to grow yourself as well as your employee. If you like this episode, please do share with your colleagues and please do subscribe our channel, the Leaders Speak podcast. See you next episode.